Hello world, Great Giza Pyramid. Well, what is the pyramid? Well, it's a little bit more than just a pile of rock in the middle of the desert. This pile of rock, the current day, has a little antenna on the top, which wouldn't be doing too much except for as the wind blows every single day, brusque discharge, static electricity, is presented onto the surface of the structure. This brusque discharge is currently equalizing out with the ground below and the air above. But if we were to take this antenna off the top of it and we were to dig out the 35th barrier where dirt and stuff has settled to create a little obstruction, a resistance factor, the static electricity would start to quarantine itself to the surface of the structure. Now over time, just like when you see wind or light going through a window that has a heater and you see the ripples in the visual effects because of the turbulence of the air, you're going to make the outside of the structure kind of look like a wavy, mirage-y type pattern. Well, I believe that goes along with the stories that were told, and how come people in the 1800s could climb up under the structure, their hair would stand up on end, and they could do Leyden jar experiments and stuff. They were standing on the surface of a large Van de Graaff generator. Now, what are we going to do with this? Well, if you look at the way the structure is actually designed, it is going to bring that static electricity into the structure and pull it down into the system, quarantining it into the room within the center there, and then extracting it out as a nice big spark through that crack that was in the wall that we dug through to find the conduit behind it. Now, at the time we didn't understand about electricity, so we came up with all sorts of really cool stories about kings and tombs and all sorts of other stuff. But nowadays that we've all been to 7th grade science, we can see what was actually going on down here. The only two parts of this whole structure, this being ground level, that actually touched earth would be the pit in the grotto and the pit in the subterranean chamber. So the pit in the grotto is actually going to become what we refer to in school as a cathode, and the pit in the subterranean chamber is going to become an anode. Now we do this with a little bit of science where we take the difference, just like how static electricity, you can make a little spark, it's the difference between one voltage potential and another, and we're going to be playing with the difference of the voltage potential of the structure next to it and the difference of the voltage potential of this structure here. That buildup of static electricity actually I don't think becomes a factor in this part of the equation because they're running the water through the conduits that are littered throughout the bottom of the Giza Plateau past this section and allowing for the transference of the voltage and doing it in such a way that this is going to become the anode. The oxygen is going to bubble up into the system and run out of the system and bubble up around the moat that's around the structure. The moat itself is going to be about 1/3 of the way the height of what I like to refer to as the ark chamber, but historically called the Queen's Chamber as far as the tomb dogma goes. The water level within the structure is actually going to be maintained at just below what I didn't draw here, which is the pool that is within the structure. And what this is, how this is obtained is because as the water is running in through the loose-fitting rocks to hide the entrance, it actually goes through a double bubbler scenario, and which brings the water, much like how the water in a toilet is maintained at a certain level, down to a level that would allow that pool to be below the surface of the water level outside of the structure. Now, that is going to be, you say, where does the water come from? Well, I guess you could say that. The oxygen, which is going out, like I said, going through there, actually going through the double bubbler, but providing a air pocket which will separate the system within the structure from any ambient voltage and situation outside the structure. You're isolating the structure. This is complemented, the hydrogen, which goes out the holes drilled in the southern wall, the one that supposedly are for the king to hide scrolls or whatever. That hydrogen actually comes up above the king's chamber into what they like to call the relieving chambers, where they find the seeds and the shells and the dust, which were the impurities brought up with the updraft and deposited into there when the gas came to a slower, it came blowing out and became a slower gas, depositing its particulates. That builds up the way hydrogen does, the pressure, and is actually bubbled in through the bottom of the king's chamber in the back northwest corner, where there's a hole in the bottom of the king's chamber next to that box that's in there. That whole current day is covered by a sheet of metal which is painted to look like rock, but it's still there. That hydrogen is going to bubble up into the room and it's going to kind of hang out there. Well, what you probably know, but may not, is that the only entrance into the structure, other than this one down here, is the southern conduit. That is actually going to be where the air, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 1% carbon dioxide. That is going to get brought into the room, burnt together with the hydrogen, and creating water. That water is going to flow down the system and do as I was suggesting as far as the pools and stuff. Now, along with that, condensation is going to be occurring, and the reason the ribs are on the side of the structure is to allow that condensation to keep falling. All this precipitation and condensation and falling is going to bring the static electricity down into the system through a series of gates and stops that are created within the system, and quarantine it down into the Queen's chamber. As condensation occurs, the opposite of a steam pipe, when you boil water and it blows out steam, here it's going to be creating a vacuum, which is going to create a draft, more so pulling this energy, this static electricity, into the Queen's chamber, the coolest location, away from all this hustle and bustle, a fire in the middle that gives the pyramid its name. Condensation is going to occur. As more and more condensation occurs, more and more surface space is given up to the water droplets, and the static electricity has less and less surface space to reside on until eventually has nowhere to go and is going to crack through the wall in a electrical type format, creating a scar that we didn't understand was an electrical scar until current day, when we understand electricity. We drilled through that to find the conduit behind it. The conduit behind it would have been led to elsewhere upon the plateau, and we can go into that when we actually discuss the other structures and how they all work in congruency to be one system, not individual standalone structures. Thank you. Have a nice day.